Namaste and welcome everyone. I'm Prachi Mishra. I'm a graduate student of public policy at ISPP University of Chicago, Harris School of Public Policy. I've been working in the Indian policy space for several years now, and the focal areas of my interests are around technology, society, policy, national security, and international development. Today, I'm in the august company of Sri Rajiv Malhotra, who has recently come up with a book on artificial intelligence. It's titled Artificial Intelligence and the Future of Power. Namaste and welcome, sir. We also have with us Professor Narahari, who is the chair of the Division of Electrical, Electronics and Computer Science at the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. He has been a faculty at the Department of Computer Science and Automation there and has been there for several decades. And his core research interests are to apply game theory, mechanism design, and machine learning to research problems on the interface of computer science and economics. Namaste and welcome, sir. We're happy to have you here. I would also like to welcome Dr. Gita Manjunath. She's an AI entrepreneur. She earned her PhD from ISC Bangalore and founded a healthcare company called Niramai some time ago. Happy to have you, Dr. Gita.
Hi, thank you.
We also have with us Mr. Anurag Kesri, who is a robotics engineer, aerospace evangelist, and a data analytics professional with international experience in the US, the UK, and India. At present, he's based in Luxembourg. He's interested in high leverage and emerging technologies, and is particularly interested in their social and geopolitical implications. Hi, welcome, Anurag. I would now like to invite Rajiv, sir, to introduce his book.
Well, thank you, Prachi, for moderating this and organizing this wonderful panel. And to all of you with amazingly important and diverse backgrounds, I'm very grateful to you for having taken the time to bring this discussion forward. Because the more discussion, debate, new kinds of wide, diverse perspectives, the better for this cause. And 2021 is the year I'm going to spend on the AI and its relevance and implications. I spent 5 years putting this book together. Before that, when I was 20 years old, which is 50 years ago, I was a graduate student of computer science, and my topic was in artificial intelligence, but at that time it was very basic compared to today. So after a career of 25 years in the corporate world, technology-wise, in consulting, in being an entrepreneur, starting my own companies, I quit all that in '94 and went into the humanities and social sciences as if with my own Infinity Foundation. And so it seemed to many people that when I came back with this book on AI, many people have asked, why are you talking about AI and all? I guess people don't know the early part of my career and the fact that I kept in touch with it. So 5 years ago, several things started happening that convinced me that AI is going to be so important and people are not taking enough note of some of these things. And therefore, I started quietly doing a whole lot of my research. And I decided I won't talk about it too much publicly until the book is out. So the book is now out, and you can get it at www.aiandpower.com. It's also available on Kindle. It's available on Amazon and in most countries and various other places. Now, the AI is a game changer in the level of the way it can augment and substitute mental activity, intellectual activity, both good and bad. Any amplification of our physical bodies, muscular bodies, like a car or a bicycle, it augments your muscular ability, can be used for all kinds of things. Similarly, vision through a telescope, through a microscope, or enhancing your hearing capability, your senses, cognition. All of these enhancements through technology have been happening for a very long time. And they have various kinds of applications. Use of energy, artificial energy being generated through whether it's nuclear or any means, has applications that you could say are good applications or bad applications. The technology itself is neutral. There's nothing good or bad about the technology. It is what it is. It's the way humans use it that makes the difference. So when I talk about the social impact of AI, there's already a lot of good social impact, and there will be medical breakthroughs, a lot of, more efficiency in society, better food production, better energy production, all kinds of things will happen. But the main thesis of the book is as follows. The impact will be unequal. There will be new haves and have-nots. Some people will get more benefit than others. Some people will get new careers. Some will lose their jobs. Some regions may prosper, and other regions of the same country may be depressed because the type of economy they had was not conducive to AI. It was replaced by AI, and they were not able to jump on the AI bandwagon. Some countries will colonize other countries. So the Industrial Revolution did something similar. The Industrial Revolution was a remarkable breakthrough and brought the world to a different level. But, Britain became a colonizer and India became colonized. So, the effects are not the same. That's one reason I'm writing this book. I'm not anti-AI. I'm a technocrat myself. But I'm talking about the responsibility that people have when they get such a powerful weapon, when they have a responsibility towards the underclass, those who are not equally empowered to take advantage of it. So I'm raising that flag. Second point is that many other disruptions get so much coverage in the media, like take global warming. All kind of NGOs, which is a very important topic, and all kind of NGOs are involved, policymakers are involved, think tanks are involved, the youth are involved, so much discussion going on. I don't see that kind of a public discussion on the implications of AI. I see all these conferences are dominated by the technocrats. They're sponsored by people like Google and Facebook and Microsoft and so on, which is fine. But the control of the discourse in the hands of the big elite digital giants is a problem for me. I would like more representation from the bottom of the pyramid, from the villages who are going to be affected, from the bottom 500 million Indians who are going to be affected by this technology, and Africans. I don't see them in these conferences. I don't see their voices. I see them, others representing them as proxies. And that's an issue for me. The NGOs haven't gotten educated on this technology. So this way I've discovered a lot of asymmetries which trouble me. So I wrote this book, and it's organized into 5 battlegrounds. So with this brief note, I'll turn back to Prachi and let the discussion begin, Prachi.
Professor Narahari, would you like to open the discussion here?
Thank you very much. So this is a wonderful book. There are many aspects of the book that I have liked. For example, the categorization into 5 battlefields, and the phrase battlefield that Rajiv sir has chosen is very, very interesting. The most powerful one, the last one, is India's future. So I think it's a fascinating set of topics. Skimming through these pages, I also found that the book has been dedicated in a very interesting way to all the young scientists and technocrats. That was very interesting for me. So I'm really curious to know why Rajiv sir has actually dedicated his book to the technocrats and young scientists. So what is the reason behind dedicating this book to technocrats and young scientists? So that would be my first question for Rajiv sir. I have several other questions. I have been a fan of Rajiv sir from the beginning. That doesn't mean that I agree with everything that he says, but I have always liked the powerful way in which he is able to put forward his arguments. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Naharaji. It's so important to have senior people, well-informed people, experts, subject matter experts like you engage this topic, and I'm very grateful to you. The reason I dedicated this book to the youth is because I feel that the conversation, in fact, has to be led by them. The reason is their lives are going to be affected. I mean, I'm 70 plus, none of this is going to affect me. I'm okay. But I'm very concerned about the youth. I feel that the youth are the problem and the youth are the solution. The youth are the problem because there's a very large population, and I'm not sure in a world of AI and automation where there will be unemployment, new jobs will of course be created. I'm not sure that a vast majority of the youth who are not well educated will be taken care of. I worry about it. But I think that at the same time, you have the youth who are technocrats who can solve problems. For them, it's a great opportunity. but then they also need to be made socially aware. They need to have a conscience. They need to have a heart. So it's putting the heart into them. Those are the reasons I dedicated to the young technocrats, and I intend to spend a large part of my effort in 2021 working with subject matter experts, senior people from all over the place, but also and particularly with youth groups.
Very well said, sir. All that I can say is you're 70 years young. That is something that I can, very emphatically say. Yeah, thank you so much.
Dr. Geeta, you can go next. Yeah.
Dr. Rajiv, sir, this is a real privilege to be part of your panel, to be reviewing and giving comments on your book itself, along with my favorite professor, Narari, sir. Of course, your book actually gives a very different perspective of AI. Personally, being a sort of AI scientist, trying to see how AI can make a difference in the lives of millions of Indian people using our breast cancer screening solution, which is completely powered by AI. Honestly, I was a little taken aback and thinking like, oh my God, there's so much of negative aspect that has been brought out, and will that create some commotion, right? So before I get there, I really want to congratulate, and like I'm very surprised and pleasantly surprised and very beautifully articulated relationship with Vedanta. Sir, if you can share a little bit more about the Stula Sharira, Sukshma Sharira aspect that you brought in, and sort of brought in the concept of metaphysics and connected it with quantum mechanics, Vedanta, and AI. So can you elaborate that bit a little bit more? So I think the readers and listeners will be more fascinated to read your book more.
Thank you, Geeta. This is very nice of you. A very good question. You see, this is my favorite question. I've only touched, there's a lot of material in this book on this issue of consciousness, Vedanta, metaphysics, and so on. I'm writing a sequel, which goes in, it's another very large book. This one is already 520 pages, so I couldn't go even deeper. But I'm covering this matter in much more detail. I'm actually writing 2-3 more volumes on this AI business, taking some of these ideas further. So a lot of spirituality, Vedanta related to AI will be covered in subsequent books, not in the distant future. I just want to leave a little gap and then keep up producing these other books. But to give you in a nutshell what I've written so far in this book, the Sukshma, the Sthula Sharir is the physical body.
Yeah.
And the Sukshma Sharir is the emotional, psychological, mental body. And I take these terms and I apply them also to the Rashtra. India Rashtra has a Sthula Sharir. Mm-hmm. And the question is that has to do with infrastructure, economy, national defense, those kind of things affect the Sthula Sharir of India. So in what way is AI helping the Sthula Sharir become stronger? In what way is it disrupting the Sthula Sharir? That is one issue in this book. The Sukshma Sharir has to do with the minds, the emotions, the psychology. Are people becoming morons, being dumbed down and letting the social media run their lives, which is a very serious problem that I raise in this. This is battleground number 3. The loss of agency, the loss of self-will, our own free will, going on autopilot, what I call Googleization. A lot of young people say, why do I need to learn? I'll just ask Siri, I'll just ask Google, and they'll tell me what I need to know. Wikipedia will tell me what I need to know. Wikipedia is actually biased. I have a lot of work done that I can discuss later on the biases in Wikipedia, because it's not a democracy. There's a certain hierarchy of privileges, and certain people have more rights, they can overrule other people. And so ultimately, good proof is that my Wikipedia page has a wrong date of birth for me. Now that's pretty solid factual data. My date of birth on my driver's license, my birth certificate, my passports, all my records is exactly accurate. It's all consistent. But here it is wrong because somebody who created the page put up a date of birth. I don't even want to change it as proof that Wikipedia has factual errors. So that's the world we're living in, where there's fake data, fake news. The information is whatever the majority likes. If you get more retweets, then you must be right. That's the way it works on social media. So I'm very concerned about all of that. And so this loss of selfhood is the issue. that you've raised. Am I, according to yoga, I have to discover who I am within.
Yes.
I go within. I have these experiences that I've been having since childhood that have become very profound. So when I was in my early 40s, in the 1990s, I quit everything because I had some amazing experiences, and I decided to invest the rest of my life exploring this. So I was always into spirituality and consciousness studies and Vedanta, and in a very big way as part of my life, but I made it into a full-time thing. So that's been a large part of who I am. Now this says neti neti. I do not go for external ways of getting my pleasures and my delights, the external gratifications. However, here comes AI, which has great benefits, I agree. But the future is augmented reality, where I will be, or people will be, getting their delights and pleasures from some external stimuli. I'll go on a virtual vacation. I'll be eating virtual chocolate, where I'll get that taste without actually having physical chocolate. There will be implants, there will be wearables. So the future that AI is bringing is a kind of an artificial pleasures, artificial world, artificial ways of generating hormones and so on, endomorphines, to give me certain pleasures. This is taking us away from the Satchitanand discovery of who I am. It's not Anand. This is not generating Anand. This is generating kind of gratification of sensory desires and pleasures and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So this is strengthening the model. There has been in consciousness studies 2 models. One is that consciousness is primary, and it manifests in all these physical ways, and these are secondary, and they're mithya. And so discovering back who we are, the Anand, is the whole journey. And then there is a rival view which comes from very material biology. I have been part of this debate for a very long time, since early 90s, in a very aggressive, in a very active way. And that view is that the body is a machine, biology is a mechanical thing. And to use AI terminology, biology is nothing but an algorithm. It's just algorithms. Body consists of all kinds of algorithms. Every organ is just a whole lot of algorithms. And these algorithms are like machine learning. They're always becoming smarter, learning, adapting, evolving. So what artificial intelligence is doing is strengthening this second model of who we are. It's strengthening the model because, first of all, to develop artificial intelligence, you don't need to know anything about consciousness. You just need to just need to reverse engineer the neurology, the neuroscience, turn it into algorithms. The better you can turn neuroscientific models of the body into algorithms, the better you can manipulate those algorithms. You can cure PTSD, which is great. You can cure bipolar disorder by interjecting positive thoughts when the person is having negative thoughts. You can monitor the flood of the neuron flood when somebody is having a certain experience, record it, and then you can replay that from memory and recreate that experience. So if a certain neuron burst corresponds to this person's joyful moment, then when he is sad or want to do a murder or commit suicide, then you can just push a button and play that joyful flood of neurons, and he will feel very happy. So you can do all kinds of things with it, but you can have virtual tourism, AI-based travel. You can also have fantasies. You can do all sorts of things. So the real battle for self, which is battleground number 4. Battleground number 4 is what you asked about, which is the battle for self. So on the one side of this battleground, and battleground means that there's multiple ways of looking. And so I'm basically featuring what are the multiple contestants in each battleground. So in battleground number 4, which is called the battle for self, you have the Adhyatmic view, the Vedanta view, the view of consciousness, the view of people who are meditators. That's one view. And then you have the AI. AI is the ultimate that human beings have created using the biological model of gratification of a biological machine. I use all these terms, that this is we are modeled as a bio machine. And so the silicon machine can interact with the bio machine because they're both algorithms. They got all algorithms. So the algorithms, you can learn in the silicon, you can map the algorithms of the biology and reproduce mental behavior and understand mental behavior and manipulate people's mental behavior, because you can now put them into models. And you can also do the other way around. You can artificially manufacture experiences. So this battle for self is a battle for the future of what happens to AI and what happens to Vedanta. Now, I'll stop here because where I'm going next in my next book is I'm actually proposing things that can be done very constructively in AI using Vedanta model, using Vedic model.
I would really love to read that book, because as a student of spirituality, very, very Mickey Mouse steps I'm taking there versus obviously done something in AI. And I found this extremely fascinating view in this space. And I would love to debate more, but I let other people talk. And then I really want to come back to this. Very nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gita. Anurag, over to you. We would like to hear your thoughts, and you can begin the conversation with sir.
Certainly. Thank you. Thank you very much. And it's been my pleasure, certainly, also collaborating with Rajiv, providing some inputs and comments on this book as it was shaping up. And indeed, I think it contributes to an increasingly popular but very relevant and much needed genre of public discourse on AI and its multifaceted impacts on individuals, societies, nations, and indeed even between relationships between nations. So to sort of switch tracks a little bit from the previous question and then focus a little bit more on what's happening around us in reality. The last 1 year has been quite a different experience for all of us with the pandemic, and indeed Rajiv does go into this as well in the book. One point I wanted to make was that India sort of pleasantly surprised us by most accounts. It's pivoted reasonably well, considering its sheer scale, the challenges of scale, complexity, and diversity, has pivoted to, survive this crisis. It's doing better than several other countries, indeed. And, with the recent, and then this has certainly been quite a catastrophic in so many other ways. With the recent, sunburst hacks, for instance, on the US government in the cyber arena, I wonder if India can sort of pivot with the same agility, respond with the same sort of, same sort of mobilization as it did to the pandemic. And in fact, I would say, and I hope Rajiv agrees with me, that sort of an attack on India, and which is indeed quite a imminent and real possibility, and a cyber attack infiltrating a lot of our systems. That could be, in some cases, worse than the COVID pandemic, right? And we have been able to survive the pandemic, because of we have, a lot of the digitization of finance and medical records and so on. And if those fundamental things are sort of attacked, then we are not even able to manage, getting through a medical pandemic, let alone, other aspects. So how, and Rajiv, this is a question to you, how do you think India would respond to something like this? And what needs to change? What are the lessons we can learn from this sort of biological virus, the pandemic, and similarly apply it to, a potential, a cyber attack on the country that might be of a bigger scale and indeed more consequential?
So, I've shared the whole book with you, Anurag, so you know the details, and I shared many months ago. So you know that a very large part of my criticism in this book is the entry of Facebook and Google into Geo by making big investments and kind of getting in the door. And I see this as a huge breach of data rights of Indians, that the Googles of the world and the Facebooks of the world and Twitters of the world are having a field day capturing big data on Indians. So when Indian number one fights against Indian number two, and they do all kind of fighting and all that very dirty stuff and all, this is going on all over the world. Guess who's capturing all this data? It's these people, what I call digital giants. They are the ones capturing all this data, building psychological models, saying, okay, this is what turns on Anurag, this is what turns him off, this is what gets him all ticked off at somebody, these are his friends, these are his enemies, ideologically he's on this side. If we drop this fake news, he'll go for it. If we drop that fake news, he won't go for it. If we give him all these 5-10 offers, this is what he's likely to click, these are his fantasies, these are his weaknesses. This kind of a modeling is happening to every single human being on the planet that they have in the system. And so hundreds of millions of Indians are being psychologically modeled more intimately than your personal psychologist would be able to model you, because the data they have is more than the 1 hour session you have with your psychologist. When you have a 1 hour session with your psychologist, he or she knows only so much about you and you don't reveal everything. Whereas on your social media, you just give out everything. And so the model they have of you, they have more data than your relatives and friends have. They know you better than you know yourself, because you don't want to admit certain things and you have a certain fantasy idea of yourself. And these algorithms, these machine learning algorithms, these deep learning algorithms are figuring you out in much better detail. The reason they are successful is why they're able to sell merchandise using these AI algorithms. And that is the reason the advertising is shifted there. And that is the reason they got $1 trillion market caps. All of a sudden, 10, 15 years ago, these companies didn't exist, or they were very tiny. So all the big marketing and media and advertising is diverted only because these companies can guarantee that they understand the audience. They will target not only which people should be given messages on behalf of the sponsor, but what the message say for each type of person. And with deep fakes, they can even fabricate. They can take a standard commercial, and for one person, it'll be a beautiful blonde. Another person, it'll be a beautiful brunette. For somebody, it may be an older person, man. And somebody, it may be a younger woman. So how to manage your psychology is what these systems have hacked. That is battleground number 3, is the hacking of the agency, the hacking of the inner psychology. So this hacking in India is being done by foreign companies. So they know Indians better. They know how to create trouble. They know how to create a Dalit uprising, what to say, how to create a Muslim uprising, how to create a Hindu uprising against certain people. People pushing buttons through these algorithms are sitting abroad with no accountability before the Indian law or before Indian public, are actually running the show. So I'm comparing it with the East India Company making one Raja fight another. Okay, and deciding, adjudicating, okay, you are right, you are wrong, I'll help you, I'll block him. That is what these digital media are doing. So the power of Indian minds, power over Indian minds is now in the hands of people elsewhere pulling these strings. So China did the right thing. They blocked all these 15 years ago and they created Chinese equivalents. So they are accountable in China. Now, Jack Ma is in trouble with the government, because he stepped out of line. If it had been some Eric Schmidt, previous CEO of Google, or Zuckerberg, or somebody from one of those companies, the Chinese wouldn't have access to that guy. But because Jack Ma is right there, they're setting a lesson that, you guys who operate in Chinese jurisdiction, we can come after you. So India doesn't have, there is no accountability in India. In India, some of my posts on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter, for totally useless reasons, get blocked, get shadow banned. We put out a panel discussion on the AI applications in the military. And I had Air Vice Marshal Bahadur and General Pannu, and the 3 of us were discussing that. We got a message from YouTube that it has been blocked. For what? So then our guy called, Brian, in fact, who's here, he called, and he finally, what they told him is that according to the AI algorithm, this is promoting abortion. But it is not promoting abortion. So the algorithms got their own weirdness. They got their own errors. They got their own biases. And so we are being controlled. There's biases in these algorithms. The way they're trained is not objective. It's certainly not friendly to the Indian culture. The premises of what is good and what is bad is not friendly to the Indian society. It is somebody else's criteria of what is good and what is bad. And I have so much to write on this. And I have written in this book and have so much more to write on this. So the entire India has sold itself, its data rights and data access to foreign digital giants. And these digital giants are now the big advisors telling Niti Aayog, which is the planning commission, what should be India's AI strategy. They are the ones in the advisory boards. It is McKinsey's, it is World Economic Forum, it is PricewaterhouseCoopers. It is these kind of guys. And the Googles and Microsofts and Amazons and Twitters and Facebooks of the world, they are sitting in the government advising, they are sitting in the ministry, they are sitting in Jio as an investor who got the money, and the Jio jumping up and down. Their shares are very good, they're very happy. Mukesh Ambani is even richer and he's a bigger hero. I don't like any of that. So I have a very contrarian view towards the Indian industry, falling for the foreign digital giants, the Indian government falling for that, for the Indian gurus for being totally ignorant about this, not even knowing a darn thing, the Indian NGOs not playing their role, which they ought to be playing a role. The Indian media doesn't know a whole lot. So who knows all this? That is why I decided that phase 1 of this book launch should be with technocrats, should be with people who are subject matter experts. They at least understand my argument. They may not be social scientists, but they can understand the argument I'm giving because they know the power of AI and they understand all the things I'm talking about. I talked to a couple of very important, well-known economists in India on this, on the issues when Geo accepts so much money from Facebook and Google. I got pushback. They said, no, you don't understand all this AI business, all this security threat. Oh, no, how can it be? They couldn't believe when I told them that this gives the power, more power than old-fashioned media. This gives power to control people's minds. They couldn't believe it. So I said, but Putin intervened in US general elections. I mean, so, there's all kind of examples I could give. This is why Edward Snowden is running away in Russia, because he exposed this. And that was many, many years ago. Things have gotten even worse now. So this business of surveillance, what these guys can do with face recognition, all these cameras everywhere, there are a few 100 million cameras, in India being monitored, and and with facial recognition, with shape recognition, figuring out who are your friends, who are you with, where you go. India can be blackmailed. The Indian leaders are all over this social media. They can figure out how to blackmail this guy. So I think that India's ability to manage pandemic is one thing, but in the case of data, in the case of how much the big data has been compromised, and I give several examples in this book, which I think will generate a lot of debate, controversy, and so on. But I'm willing to face all that and discuss all that. But the amount of data of India that has been compromised already, and the very superficial data protection laws that are still being debated, not even enforced yet. There's a huge dichotomy there. And by the time these laws are in the books, and then by the time they are implemented, the data is siphoned off so much. Even if you stop the data moving out, the point is that the models have been built. The models on, which Breaking India force can be made to fight which other force, and who will be aligned with whom, and what are the triggers? What are the triggers? And who are the stakeholders? These models exist. So turning India into kind of a virtual battlefield, with somebody else on their dashboard figuring out what to do. This is a very dangerous state for India's survival as a nation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So indeed, so the pandemic is just one crisis, but in fact, the bigger crisis is that of data and data sovereignty and so on.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much, Anurag. Rajiv, sir, extending to what you just spoke about China and US and this race for the top leadership slot. I as a 27-year-old, as a policy analyst, I see that the rest of the world is becoming more and more vulnerable to AI-led neo-imperialism and neo-capitalism. What do we do? What is your message for the youth here? What are we supposed to do?
Well, you've seen my book, and there is a whole. I have a section called "Return of the East India Company." I have a section on that, and I compare. I have a whole section comparing China with the ancient Rome, where Rome built these roads, and they had hard power with engineering and all that, and which was the basis for a far-flung empire. And China is doing this with the new kind of roads, sea and land routes and whatnot, and through Pakistan and through Africa and whatnot. And they are sort of the new Rome in that sense, with using engineering and technology to kind of have export, import control, movement of goods, movement of people, movement of money, all of that. So China is becoming like the new Rome. I talk about it. And then I also compare China with Britain. Britain's industrial revolution and colonization. I compare that. So I think that both China and the United States will compete for colonies the way France and England were competing for colonies. And the role of AI in this revolution, in this new industrial revolution, will be similar to the role of the previous industrial revolution, which launched the age of colonialism. You know, it's very interesting. People say that, look, why are you worrying about economic problems? A good example is the industrial revolution created more jobs than it destroyed, and the economy of the world became so many times bigger. I'm saying yes, but it was not equal. It became bigger for Britain, and Indians are the ones who lost jobs. British people are the ones who got those jobs. India de-industrialized because those industries were not electrified factories. They were not electrified factories. So they had electrified factories with the industrial revolution. So they took all the jobs and they colonized India. And they were the whole colonial establishment of the world was based on the industrial revolution in Europe. So it was an unequal impact that you have to look at. So while you can say the AI has a lot of good things, the point is, are the good things available equally? And the answer is no. So this, imperialism is definitely on its way. And this is going to be, it's not 20 years away. I mean, people, first of all, I'm very shocked that I get all these invites from India. Like for my previous books, there's a momentum, so people inviting me. And now for the last few months, when they invite me, I tell them I'll talk about AI. Rather than talking about some Hindu phobia or some breaking India force going on or some temple issue or some, you know, what to do with this scandal and should Chidambaram go to jail or is AAP, the UP party, bad? I mean, I told them, look, you are obsolete. All that is just tamasha. It is trivial compared to the ship is sinking. The ship has got huge leaks. The ship will sink unless the captains of the ship take note of it very quickly and take some actions. I don't see that happening. I see India being obsessed with politics, pettiness, who will win what elections, infighting. I don't see the brilliant Indian minds focusing on these issues. I see them focusing on all kinds of other issues. So that is the reason I'm writing this book, to wake up, shake up. The smart people, India has so many smart people, and they need to wake up on this issue. So this, the imperialism is going on. US had the whole thing figured out. They're always 20 years into the future. But China stole a lot of secrets. Beg, borrow, steal, whatever it took. They took a lot of AI type stuff, technology. So China is catching up. And China made a decision, they announced it publicly, that by 2025, they will be the #1 in the world in AI. And most Americans I've talked to in national security and in various other areas fear that that is actually happening, that China is becoming #1. So this is the basis of this whole trade war between US and China. And it's sort of like France and England were fighting each other. They were fighting wars with each other. Okay, but then they were both of them fighting over the colonies. Who gets which colony? There was a French army in India and a British army in India and a Dutch army in India, and they're all fighting each other for colonial control. So you will see USA and China doing this in many parts of the world. And this is a new age of imperialism, a new age of colonization. AI is the engine driving it, like the Industrial Revolution was. This has not become a topic of conversation. It needs to become a topic of conversation. Our gurus are sleeping. Our social scientists are sleeping. I think the people who really know all this in India are the military people, because I talk to them. They are concerned. And they really get it.
That was very interesting. Our gurus are sleeping. Our social scientists are sleeping. That was very, very interesting from you. You also said the youth of the country are both the problem. They're also the solution. I think Anurag, pointed out a very dangerous threat, namely the cybersecurity threat and the data threat and so on. So what is happening is that AI seems to have a lot of destructive capability, which could be exploited by evil forces, and that could lead to social welfare destruction. This is one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is, for example, Dr. Gita Manjunath has a wonderful company, and it is able to help so many women to come up with early diagnosis of breast cancer. It is such a noble thing that is being done, and this particular company is completely driven by AI. So the other way of looking at AI is, it's a magical way of, achieving social welfare maximization. So social welfare maximization versus social welfare destruction, both seem to be on the anvil. So now, if we want to steer the world in general and India in particular towards social welfare maximization rather than social welfare destruction, what is it that we need to do? And what is the role of the social scientists? What is the role of the gurus? What is the role of professors like me? And what is the role of the youth in making this happen? So if you can share your thoughts, that would be wonderful.
Wonderful. This is a great question. Thank you for the question. I've read every single report on AI's impact in India, all kind of reports, several thousand pages worth of reports, whether it's Niti Aayog or FICCI or CII or NASSCOM or PricewaterhouseCoopers, Ernst & Young, World Economic Forum, United Nations, you name it. I've read those reports. Interestingly, they're all top down. Particularly the corporate advisors like these consulting companies, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Ernst & Young, McKinsey, and all these kind of guys. And some, unfortunately, Niti Aayog just quotes them. They went and they interviewed 200 HR departments of big companies. So it's a big company, Sensex economy, top down. None of them went to the panchayats to see the bottom-up view of the villages. That's 500 million people. None of them went and said, let's go and do a district by district, state by state, bottom-up idea of AI's impact. Industry by industry, state by state. So the social scientists need to activate this. They need to take this book and amplify it and go to different states and ask them, okay, let's do something in your state. Let's do something in your state. They need to go even down to the village level. So the understanding of AI's impact has to be bottom up. I'm worried about the 500 million poorest people in terms of economic social strata. I'm worried about those guys. I'm not worried that, driverless car will come and Mahindra will make some more money and their stock price will go up or whatever. That'll happen. But, about 6, 7, 8% of all Indian workers are working for the big companies, the corporate organized sector. Amazing. Less than 10%, somewhere closer to 5% of all Indian workers are working for the organized companies, the ones who get FDI, the ones who are the big, they're the ones in the AI conferences. It is their speakers. It is they who hire these consulting companies to tell them what to do. So they are defining how AI is great. But the impact on migrant workers, who's thought of that? The impact on farmers, who's thinking of that? Nobody. The impact on small and medium industries, not too much being going on, just some lip service. So the AI knowledge and research on impact is focused on top-down, big business people, their point of view. And it is focused on upskilling a labor force to be outsourced to the Americans so that the Americans can use this outsourced AI coolies to create more intellectual property for themselves, which is not Indian intellectual property. It is intellectual property belonging to the American company. So when we are very proud that so many lakhs of our young people are working in software, the point is they did not develop any Indian intellectual property that India got the benefit from. They developed intellectual property for their foreign clients. There are a lot of very smart Indians in AI, but most of them have gone overseas. And the ones who are in India are working for Microsoft in India or Google in India. They are not working for Indian companies. And the ones who are working for Indian companies, most of them tend to be, the venture capitalist tends to be an American company or a Chinese, it used to be Chinese and American, or some European companies. And their goal in life is that they'll be bought off by an American company. So this is what's happening. We're becoming laborers. So we are like coolies. We have coolies for hire by other people. Now the old coolies are no longer needed. So we're going to upskill our people, make them smarter coolies, AI coolies, data scientists, so that American will hire them. I criticize in this book a quote by Uday Kotak, saying it is his dream. And this is industry leader's dream. It is his dream that just like people in the urban areas are working for Microsoft and all these people, he dreams that the villagers will also one day be working for Microsoft. So I said, my God, what a joke. Why not a dream that we will create our own operating system, we will create our own social media, we will create our own, like China has done. Why the dream that we will become the servant of this Ma Baap sitting, this Gora Saab sitting somewhere, and we'll become his servant? Why this slavish mentality? This is a colonized mentality of our leaders. Uday Kotak, I put his quote there. So this is the problem that I am facing. And the problem, this is a very serious problem of attitude towards, lack of self-esteem in ourselves. Indians are very brilliant people, but somehow neither the government nor the academics nor the industry have been able to organize them into a very big AI, mechanisms. So I propose, one of the concrete things I propose is that just like we have ISRO for space and we have Bhabha Atomic Research for atomic energy, we should have a huge enterprise like that for AI. And by AI, I mean not only just pure AI in a narrow sense, I mean quantum computing, I mean semiconductors, aerospace, robotics, face recognition, vision, all these augmented realities, all the conglomerate, the ecosystem of technologies, that are where AI plays a very central role as sort of moving them forward and combining them and so on. This kind of a thing deserves the same priority, the same funding, the same national level that space has gotten and atomic energy has gotten. In fact, I was in a discussion with the former chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission, Anil Kakorkar, on my book, and he endorsed the book. In that, he says that when Homi Bhabha, soon after independence, convinced Nehru that even though we are hungry, we don't have enough food, we are a poor country, but we must invest in atomic energy to be self-sufficient and to be one of the major players in the world, because this will be very important for the next generation. He said that. And Satish Dhawan, whom I knew as a teenager, my father and he were they went to college together in Lahore, so he was a family friend. Satish Dhawan was such a pioneering figure in India's space program. And look, suppose we had not done the space program, it would be a very serious problem for us today. So you see, this is what AI is now, where atomic energy was in the 50s and space starting in the 60s and 70s, how it went up. This is the future is now AI. And it's not going to be over several decades. I predict by the middle of this decade, the haves and have-nots of AI will be more or less permanent. And the ramifications in terms of economy and who's getting colonized and who's in trouble will become very evident. And I'm worried for India. I'm really worried for India. So the gurus, Naraharji, gurus don't want to come on my discussion to talk about this subject. They don't want to talk because they're saying things like, why should I talk? What is irrelevant? Why, I don't know, what is this? They're giving very superficial, simple views, very simple-minded, but they're generally not well-informed. And so, but I've got one young Ramakrishna Mission Swami. He very openly said, I know nothing, but I'll learn. You tell me, I'll learn, I'll read. So I gave him a lot of material and he's quickly reading. So that's a good guru. That's a good guru. But the senior gurus who are big shots are too proud to want to learn because they want to show like they know everything and what they don't know doesn't matter. That's kind of arrogance. Okay. Now, as far as social scientists is concerned, Narharji, I went to Delhi University sociology department and various social sciences department. I went to JNU and I looked for young social scientists who would join all this. And so many people offered because they thought it'll give them some instant limelight. They want to become important. But when I gave them reading material, I gave them chapters of my book. I gave them things to read. I didn't see them being very sharp or very bright. They were very dull people. They didn't quite understand it. I tried to tell them that the methodologies of research in social sciences are becoming obsolete. The way anthropologists capture data is old-fashioned data. With AI, you can capture that data and they are capturing the data much better now. AI people have better social models about all kinds of society, villages, district, this region versus that region. different strata. They have much better models right now using all this machine learning than the old social science methodology. I try to convince them that, but unless some Gora Saab comes and gives them a new model, then unless some government official gives them some new Ministry of Education one day, maybe they'll wake up and do all this. Unless they are told the social sciences revolutionized with AI, unless somebody with authority comes and tells them that, they don't care. So I feel quite disappointed at the lack of innovativeness on the part of Indians all over across. And I've spent the last 5 years traveling here and there, talking to a lot of people confidentially.
Very well said, sir. I mean, you mentioned the name of Professor Satish Dhawan. I may like to mention to you that when I joined the institute as a student in 1979, he was the director of the Indian Institute of Science. In fact, he became the director of IISc at the age of 42, and then remained the director of IISc for 18 years until the age of 60. Recently, we had a wonderful celebration of his centenary also. And also, you mentioned about the government supporting mega initiatives. I'm very happy to tell you that the current government recently had an excellent initiative called the Vaibhav initiative, where they had 15 to 16 verticals in science and technology, and AI was one of the verticals there. The idea of the Vaibhav initiative is to network the Indian higher education institutions with higher education institutes all over the world, and especially invite the Indians who are working in these higher education institutes to have a synergy between these two groups of scientists. And it turned out that from the Indian side, I was leading the IISc initiative, and IISc was the lead institution for the artificial intelligence area. And let me tell you that the Indian government is going to invest a huge amount of money in the AI initiative, and also in the quantum technology initiative also. They're taking steps to have massive investments. So with the Atmanirbhar Bharat also, gaining a lot of visibility and gaining a lot of conviction among the Indians, I think things are going in the right direction. That's what I may like to say.
I'm very glad to hear that. I'm very glad to hear that. And I hope that you see. But one thing, if I may add, if I may interject, is
Yes.
it's one thing to network bright people, but ISRO is not just a networking of space scientists that are scattered all over the world. There is actual projects they have to deliver, missions. So I'm reminded of in 1960s. In 1960. A little bit after 60, the Soviets took a leapfrog. They leapfrogged ahead in space, and the Americans were taken by surprise. And then in 1961, John F. Kennedy said it is his dream that America should land on the moon during this decade. In 1961, he said that. There was no moon program, no American moon program. Soviets also didn't have moon program. This was like leapfrogging ahead of just going into orbit, And surely enough, by 69, when Kennedy, of course, was dead, but 69, Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. So from 61 to 69, they were able to create a program from nothing and just achieve this huge goal. Now they put a large amount of investment, and it required a focus, it required headquarters, so what India needs is, one is like networking, we talk, we go to conferences together, we co-author, we are on webinars together, that kind of collaboration happening. And we invite each other as visiting professors to conferences and so on. That's fine. But there needs to be mission. So let me suggest some missions. IBM has Watson, which is their AI engine, the giant AI engine. So Watson goes into banking and automate the AI. They go to medical, automate the AI with AI. So this is their AI solution that they go to one industry after another all over the world and or use it. And then there is GPT-3. Which is for natural language processing. Now, India should have had the GPT-3. India should have developed the Watson. Now, these are not projects that require 50 people, 100 people only. These are very giant projects. So India needs to, and maybe with you as the leader, you could move this forward. There need to be a project that says we will do the GPT-4, 5, 6. We'll go and get ahead of them, and we will create our own something like Watson. We will create. So India will create its own engines, its own intellectual property, proprietary applications on a very big scale. We need to do something of that kind. And if you look at why India spends so much millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars for every Rafale jet, it's AI. I talked to the Airline Smarts. It is the AI which allows the pilot to do the job of 20 pilots, because it's tracking so many signatures of so many planes. It's able to look at the trajectories, the velocities with which they're going, figure out the right strategy, to optimize which way to go, who to attack, how to dodge. So all of that, a human being would not be able to keep up with so much. So it's the AI in these foreign jets that makes us buy them. So, we can keep saying that, yeah, it is possible for us to do it, and we are a lot of smart people, but we need to turn the brains into missions, into huge, giant bets. China made billion-dollar bets, lots of them, started huge ventures and bet correctly ahead of the curve. Now we are behind, at least 10 years behind in all this from China. We need to catch up, and we need to leapfrog ahead. That is what I'm trying to achieve in my own way by stimulating this conversation. And in my future volumes, I'm going to actually put concrete projects on the table saying, we got to do this and we got to do this.
Oh, extremely well said. I think high risk, high reward projects and mission oriented projects is the way to go about it. I hope India will take the right moves in the right direction. So I think I wanted to ask you one question, but I think you have answered most of the things that I wanted to ask. Just one final question. What do you think are the top 3 things that India must do going forward if they want to, face the AI revolution in the best possible way?
So I already said one, which is they should start some things the scale of ISRO, not just a collaboration of intellectuals, but actually a mission with missions to deliver with deliverables during this decade, like the John F. Kennedy, let's put man on the moon during the decade. That kind of a vision type of thing, and I have ideas there. That is one thing that India should do. India should create its own social media platforms and get them hundreds of millions of subscribers, members, followers, whatever, the way China has done and the way United States has, and should eliminate its dependency on American social media, and not encourage and not allow even perhaps these American social media to come and take big stakes in Indian tech giants, Indian giants like Jio. Selling out Jio was the wrong thing to do. Reliance is one of the very few companies that could have said, we'll put in $1 billion to make an operating system. We'll put in $1 billion and invest in our own search engine, and we'll put in our own social media and all that, the way China did. A small chota mota guy can't do it. There's very few companies. It's either Tata's who can do it, or it's Reliance who can do it. There's very few companies, and they should have put their money into that, rather than, okay, we are very fortunate because they put $20 billion or whatever amount of money. It shows that we must be very important, very special. I mean, that's like East India Company comes and does a takeover of Madras presidency, and Madras people, suppose they're feeling very proud that, wow, the British have come and invested in us. So, we are happy colonized. We are just a bunch of happy colonized people, because we got this inferiority complex that, Google came, everybody congratulating, Anand Mahindra saying, bravo, Mukesh. I've quoted this in my book. First of all, the billionaires, how they became billionaires should be questioned, because some of that, while it's all legal, it is a lot of wage arbitrage. It's keeping the Indian wages down so that you can have a big markup compared to American wages and make that arbitrage back middleman profit, and not reinvesting it in futurist technologies, because that's long-term and that's risky, and these guys didn't want to do that. And then these billionaires, sell off their large part of their equity, like a large part of Infosys, and many of these companies are owned on the New York Stock Exchange. They're owned in foreign stock exchanges. They're not even belonging to the Indians now. We just work there and the headquarters are there. We feel very proud. We feel proud that this guy is a billionaire. Why are we so proud of our billionaires? I mean, why are they icons? Why are we worshiping these guys? Okay, they made a lot of money and they're living a good life. That's good for them. But why do we have to worship them? They are not the right more role models. And you need to create the role models are entrepreneurs who are making technology made in India, for India, Indian intellectual property, not selling labor to somebody else. And so the few companies, so you want to see what you want my views on what we should do. So one of the things is that these very rich companies should invest in developing Indian platforms and taking over the American platforms, just like the Chinese did. And we need much stronger data rights, data protection. The current ones I've seen some of this between private, non-private data and whatnot. I mean, this is better than nothing. It is better than it was before. And I congratulate some of the people who put all these together. But I do not think they've understood the full dimension and the full scope of this problem that I'm talking about in my book.
Thank you, sir. I think missions, platforms, and data protection. That's excellent.
You got it. So,
yes.
Narhari, you and I have to work together. After this, we got to create our own discussion. And after all this launch thing is done, we got to produce some ideas, concrete ideas, and conferences, proposals. I would love to work with you because your thoughts are very much in sync with mine, and I'm delighted and honored to have a person of your stature, collaborating with us.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you so much. Dr. Gita, would you like to take up the next few questions?
Sure. I wanted to sort of, elaborate on the point that Professor Narahari mentioned before, right? And sir, Raju, sir, you mentioned about Stula Sharira fixing with AI, right? And I want to go back to that discussion. And then, as you also mentioned in the introduction, right, a use of any technology depends upon how and where it's used, right? Any augmentation of physical body can be negative or positive, right? And given that there has been a lot of negative aspects, which are stressed in this for the good reason that people have to wake up. I think that was a very insightful thought, right? But still, I think we still should not forget how AI can be a boon to make high quality, affordable, comfortable, predictable life to everyone, including the rural areas. Particularly, you also mentioned about Indian entrepreneurs and so on. And I'm very proud to say that Niramai is one such Indian startup where we are trying to use AI to actually make healthcare possible to every nook and corner of India. Right. And we do have Indian IP, sir. We have 10 granted US patents, Indian patent, Canada patent, Singapore, and several others. So that is and I really loved the statement you said, like we have to actually encourage entrepreneurs to actually use AI for serving this community and such kind of jobs. And so I feel if more and more such people come up and then use AI to serve the currently underprivileged group of people, then we can definitely generate new kind of jobs, right? For example, if I speak about breast cancer screening being done completely automatically in the rural areas, these pseudo doctors are used and the screening is done by simple health workers, because the software takes all the burden out, and the red, yellow, green report is completely automatically generated by the machine. And so what this enables us is now when we have a doctor to patient ratio being very, very low, because the number of doctors serving, especially they don't want to go to the villages as well. So in that kind of a thing, if you can enable these smart health workers with these pseudo robotic machines, they become pseudo experts as well, and become almost like pseudo doctors, and then trying to provide critical healthcare at the right time. And so that we can, of course, if there is a problem, we can bring the people back to the hospital for further care and so on. But the first level critical care can be provided completely with AI. So I really request you to sort of, in your next book, as you mentioned, talk about the positive side of it, and also see how India can focus completely on using AI for the benefit of bridging the digital divide, bridging the service divide, bridging the comfort divide that exists between the rural and the urban ecosystem today, right? And that is possible, by enabling these pseudo doctors, pseudo specialists, in all over India. And of course, this will also kind of democratize highly skilled jobs like doctors and so on, where it's now available at scale to the to everybody essentially. And one last bit was about the literacy, and there will be like haves and have-nots. Yes, there will be haves and have-nots, but just like people who were driving carts are now driving cars, right? So there is a little bit of a skill change, and we see a lot more literacy. May not be a reading literacy, but definitely mobile literacy, mobile usage literacy, computer literacy. We see that to some extent, quite some extent, in villages as well. And so converting them to a different type of literate who are users of AI, would be wonderful to see. The whole India benefiting. That sort of was my broad thought as to look at the positive aspects of AI and how we can actually make everyone happy and healthy.
So that's very good. But just to sort of remind you, even if you see the table of contents and go in and read more of the book, the chapter 1 is on the positive contributions of AI in my book, chapter 1. Chapter 1 is, I'm talking about contributions in healthcare, in education, in culture, in tourism, in banking, in all kind of defense and, research. And I have it broken down by maybe 5 or 10 different kind of domains or different verticals, you might say, and what are the benefits that AI is doing. And I have summarized all this because I want to acknowledge that that is true. But then since all the conferences are full of that, and all the discussion is full of that, and all the whole buzz, the whole discourse is full of that, I don't want to. There's no reason for me to write a book on rehashing what everybody's saying. I took retirement from a very nice, thriving industrial job in tech and all that for over 26, 27 years, full time, out of it completely, not as a weekend hobby or anything, but completely involved in this. And it would be a waste of life for me to be repeating what already people know. In other words, that which is already known, which is half the glass, the other half of the glass is is empty, what they don't know. I would rather focus on balancing it out by bringing to their attention the things that they're not paying attention to, and while being fully cognizant that this has to be balanced. You see, if India did not do enough AI, then India would become a poor country, lag behind, would be colonized. This is true. If India did not have enough AI, India would become colonized. So to resist colonization, you have to do a lot of AI. If India does too much AI and the wrong kind of AI, then India will have unemployment. So this is the problem. The dilemma is, if you do too much, it's a problem. If you do too little, it's a problem. If you do too little, you'll be colonized by those who are better economically, industrially, militarily. They'll take you over. If you do too much AI haphazardly in a disorganized way without looking after the bottom of the pyramid of society, then you will create massive unemployment, social unrest. You will create hundreds of millions of people in disarray, in distress, and this will create more social problems. And I'm concerned about that. So I do want a lot of AI. I do want India to be at the cutting edge of AI. That's why I would like this GPT-X next generation should be Indian. This Watson generation 4, we ought to be shooting for. We ought to be doing big projects like that. Certainly we should do that, but we should control them in India. And we should not become dependent on, we are exporting labor and importing the results of the intellectual property produced by the same labor. You go to any big American enterprise, any industry, you'll find a very large number of Indian techies. So they are the brains who are producing a lot of the work. And then India is paying royalties and buying all this stuff back, and with all the fuss and all the conditions that the intellectual property license has in it. You see, so we are not able to harness our brains. This is the problem. This is the problem. It is not about I don't want this AI. It's just that I want a made in India AI for national purposes. So I am for AI, and the reason I'm concerned about India is that we have not utilized AI enough for our own investments, our own technology. Now, I'm not clear. I don't know how your company is funded. I hope it is funded with Indian venture money, such that, and I hope your dream is not that somebody will come along and make you a billionaire, buy you out, and you'll just be sold to Google or something.
My dream is to make everyone healthy, sir.
Very good. And keep the ownership and give the stock options to the entrepreneurs, the hardworking people in India. That is what I would like to see. And you are already doing that. So I'm very grateful to you. And I'm very thankful. And I'm so honored that I met you, because I want to encourage such people. So please continue what you're doing.
Thank you so much for waking up everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Gita. Anurag, any follow-up questions?
Often I see in my own experience too, a lot of venture money chasing these kinds of, make in India. If you look at, some of the apps that are being made, I think, as Rajivji points out, there needs to be, more education too on the part of those funding such ideas. They need to see beyond just, an app that's made in India, even if it's made in India by Indians, even if it's in Indian data centers. You have to look at, ultimately, it's a deep technology stack. Right, so the Make in India, people sort of fall for only the superficially, and you have to look at what are the APIs behind it, what are the software libraries behind it. How much of that IP is truly Indian. If it's an app that's made by Indians in India with Indian data centers, but the core software libraries are coming out of UC Berkeley, funded by National Science Foundation grants, or if it's coming out of Google open sourcing some other library or other. It kind of defeats the purpose. So I think what we need is really that sort of deep technology cultivation that focuses on the grassroots layer of the technology stack. And then, after that, anybody and everybody is building an app these days. So I think that's the easy part. It's quite straightforward. You have high school kids these days doing a lot of these. So I think that's one important point, and I'm glad to see some of the IP, that Dr. Gita has sort of alluded to is in India. We should definitely see more of those. The other point was about, and Rajiv, you mentioned this in both in your book and other talks as well, about the sort of military-industrial complexes, military-industrial and academic complexes. And you referred to the example of, the moon landings in the States. In fact, that's a topic quite close to my heart too. And, it's quite an inspirational example. In fact, if you look at the early days, just to delve a little bit deeper into that example, like the Apollo guidance computer, when people had no idea how to figure out to get to the moon, what kind of guidance system and so on. So the core technology was actually at MIT. In fact, NASA's first contract was not to an industry. They were not giving the contract to IBM. In fact, IBM and others were quite annoyed at the time. The contract actually went to MIT, which kind of took the industry by surprise. But it was MIT, which came up with the technology. It was Raytheon, a private industry, respectable defense contractor today, that actually manufactured the computer. A lot of advances were made in computing, in that process. And some of the gyroscopes were manufactured again by local industry, small companies like the Waltham Watch Factory. They built the gyroscope. So when you look at that example, it was for the first time, and perhaps the best example of academia and an academic institution, industry, and the program was obviously overseen and managed by NASA. That the role that they played, I think, is quite inspirational and very, very effective. In fact, you can see those partnerships to this day, right? I mean, the technology's changed. The key point I think I want to make, and I'm interested to see what Rajiv, as well as Professor Narahari and everyone else thinks, is that AI is certainly one technology. What in these examples that both Rajiv talked about is, and what I mentioned here, the real success in cultivating is that innovation ecosystem, right? Regardless of the technology, are we able to really bet ahead of the curve, as you put it? Are we able to sort of not just be chasing technologies, because we can always say we're 5 years behind, 10 years behind somebody in a certain technology. But if you look at countries like Germany and Japan, which actually lost a large part of their industrial base after the Second World War, they lead today not just in technology but also those ecosystems that they put together, right? So I'm curious to see are we when should we focus on AI on its own, whereas when do we focus on the whole technology, because it really is on multiple fronts that we need to sort of fight this battle.
In many of my other panel discussions, I've talked about the military-industrial academic complex. Eisenhower coined the term, popularized the term military-industrial complex, and I've added academic to it. When I came as a graduate student at the age of 20 to the United States to do my PhD in physics, and then I switched to computer science, it was so inspiring that my professor he had grants from the Department of Defense, from the Pentagon, all kind of military stuff in computer science back in those days. So I had to get security clearance to visit the Pentagon with him, even as a young student, playing a role. It's very inspiring. The Department of Defense gives so many contracts in technology to academic people, big ones. And then these academic people, the professors, they get graduate students to work on these grants. And that channels them. They're working on something very substantial. Even as a student, they know they're part of some very big thing. So imagine the inspiration it gives you. Imagine in India, it's university education is not about research. It's teaching from books and a lot of politics, a lot of student riot, and who got elected, and who's fighting whom, and who's been booed. And they when you go to a prestigious Indian university, even IIT Madras or some various IITs, and certainly Delhi University or many of these universities, you don't see a vibrancy of technological activity going on like you would in an MIT or a Carnegie Mellon. And the role of the government is huge in this. The United States government pioneered in internet. It was called DARPA-NET, Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, NET. And then they dropped the D to allow other people to get in, ARPANET. I was one of the early ARPANET users. So when I tell people I use the internet in such and such year, they say, "Oh, there was no internet at that time." It was not called internet, but that was called ARPANET. It later became renamed internet, the same protocol. The Department of Defense funded, when I was in ITT as a vice president, they funded fiber optics research. And this gentleman who was a Chinese American, in his office was next to mine. He got the Nobel Prize. If you look up the Nobel Prize for fiber optics, it was shared by 2-3 people. One of them was this gentleman. He was with us in ITT. So this was a defense contract to make fiber optics. You look at transistors, Bell Labs, somebody, they got Nobel Prizes, space program. You look at, Charles Towns got the Nobel Prize for inventing laser, also in Bell Labs, defense program. So this list is a long list. Even more recently, driverless cars. These driverless vehicles, the Department of Defense, they started a competition. They said anybody can. They had a competition in the desert the Arizona, New Mexico, California. That whole area is very desert. So they had this almost 200-mile or something journey, and you had to start here and reach there. And that was a race. They would give you a lot of money to the winner. So the first year they did it, everybody bombed. Nobody could go more than a few feet. Not a single, it had to be driverless. Your car had to drive without any driver. Nobody could go more than a few hundred feet. But people got galvanized. There was a team from Carnegie Mellon, one from MIT, one from Stanford, like that. These professors with their students developing all these algorithms with cameras and sensors and figuring out, And then they had another race, then they had another race. So the Department of Defense funded all this. And pretty soon the whole driverless industry was born. So I could give you a lot of examples that in my 50 years in this country, I've seen brilliant long-term thinking, big billion-dollar bets, big game changers that are conceived of. Often it is defense-oriented, military-oriented, CIA-oriented, very futuristic things. Then they'll give grants to industry, the McDonnell Douglas, the Northrop, the IBMs, Google, all these people have defense, big, huge defense things, Microsoft. And they give grants to the academic world. So the triangle of military, industry, academic is very strong in the United States. There is a military industry alliance, there's a military academic alliance, and then there is academic industry alliance. Why don't they why wouldn't a very cash-rich Reliance or a TCS or a Infosys, why wouldn't they go and create some academic program where some 50, 100 people will work in some institution, a lot of grants will be given, they'll network them such that in 5 years they'll come up with a GPT-5. Why couldn't they do that? I mean, this requires vision, and this requires rolling the dice on big bets and not being greedy that, okay, I have to worry about short-term income and profit. I'm going to buy another private jet and I'll build a 20-story high building in Mumbai, all this kind of stuff. And we are glorifying these people like they're the devatas. Indian society should reject this ultra rich in the last generation on tech, based on tech, and wonder why didn't these guys invest in AI? Why are we AI poor, and yet we said we are software capital of the world, and with all these guys making all this money, it doesn't make sense to me. So I fully agree with what Anurag said. Investing in ecosystems. So there is something societal. It is not just policy. Societal jugaad, which jugaad means I will quickly solve a problem for me today, and I'm not worrying about a systemic solution. I'm not worrying about going into solving something which will be for society at large, which will be a long-term strategic solution. I'm only want to get out of my predicament right now. So I will do a fix and get out of my predicament. That jugaad mentality we have developed. That jugaad mentality is very difficult to get rid of. How to go from jugaad to something which is very long-term. Now, the people who made Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa and Dholavira and all that were not doing jugaad. I mean, they were systems thinkers. These things went on for hundreds of years, and these things had an impact over thousands of square miles. You know, so that kind of scale of thinking we have had. It is not new to India, but somehow in recent times we've lost it, and we become these jugadus looking for quick fix. Quick, if I can outdo you, clever, cunning, I do this, I clever do, you know, and then I mean, that's all that matters, short term. And India needs, we do need that also. We do need short term, solution oriented, firefighting type people we do, but we also need the big guys to be in long term ecosystems, infrastructures, big bets, billion-dollar bets. We need that. And I don't see that happening. I don't know of a single multi-billion-dollar AI-oriented, tech-oriented bet that any Indian industry has done. I don't see that. I don't see which is the one big multi-billion-dollar bet that Ratan Tata can say, or Mukesh Ambani can say, or any of those guys can say that by the end of this decade, this will be our big breakthrough contribution. I don't see that. And yet we go on saying that we got so many billionaires and they're rich guys and, you know, they're like movie stars and celebrities and all that. Something wrong with our society, that our values aren't right.
So definitely a good point, because, you know, there's either, you know, the top-down way of a lot of these cash-rich companies being able to make these bets, or, you know, the government like DARPA did come forward with the grand challenges, you know, throw a challenge and really stimulate industry and academia to, you know, come up with entries to do that. And we see, unfortunately, you know, nothing of that scale or similar happening yet. And hopefully that will change.
Professor, any closing thoughts?
I think I have a takeaway from the wonderful discussion we had today. Rajiv sir has talked about the AI battlefields. And I think today, during these conversations, he has also given us a mantra to how we can actually conduct ourselves or win the war in these battlefields. I think his mantra is Indian missions, Indian platforms, and data diligence. So if we are able to do that, then I think we are definitely going to win. But then on the battlefields, we will need many surgical strikes. And these surgical strikes will be in the form of companies like Niramai of Gita Manjunath. So if we have 1,000 Gita Manjunaths and we have 1,000 surgical strikes like that, so with this mantra of Indian missions and Indian platforms and data diligence, I think India is well poised to match China, the United States, and go much beyond. I think that's my take away from the wonderful conversation today?
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Rajiv, sir, any thoughts from your end?
Well, I just want to thank everybody, Professor Narahari, also Prachi, you put it all together, and Dr. Gita, you are brilliant, and we're very proud of you, and Anurag, great work you're doing, and good insights. So I feel we had a nice cross-section of views, people from different careers and different backgrounds, and different parts of the world. I really want that this year, I want your help to take this message further. So beyond this wonderful panel, we should do many more. I would like to do a full conference, a virtual conference on this very subject, and would like to invite you and help me out in this, so that the message goes to the state governors and chief ministers and level. It goes to the district level. It goes to panchayat level. It goes into different languages. It should go to NGOs. We should also go after some gurus and convince them to do a round table with us and talk about all these things. So and all the social media activists who got all these YouTube channels, somebody got these Twitter millions of followers, they're lost. They are lost about the big implications of their own actions. I keep telling them that you are very successful in somebody else's platform. He can push one button and you're out. Or he can make a threat and you fall in line. So this has not sunk in, and we are still glorifying our success based on somebody else's stage. On their stage, we are doing our dance and doing our acrobatics and doing our performance, but he controls the stage, he controls the lighting, he pulls the strings, he can kick us out. I mean, we don't have our own platforms. That is the point that Dr. Narahari said. So thank you very much, everybody. Really an honor to have been part of this discussion. Namaste from me. Thank you for watching. You can subscribe here and also hit the bell icon to make sure you get notified. To donate, please click this button.